Good evening, friends, and welcome to the world of the International Fab Talks. We are back again with yet another wonderful celebrity. Our guest speaker for today is Roopa Belur. She's joining us all the way from Bengaluru. She is a therapist in Canada. She has come down for a holiday to Bengaluru, and hence we've requested her to share her time with us. She's very kind, compassionate and warm and very passionate about the work that she does. Join me, friends, to invite our celebrity and guest to know more about her profession and to celebrate her journey in creating a beautiful space for all of us. Everyone in this world are important. We should respect everyone and give them the necessary time, energy, and dignity, of course. The human dignity should be maintained. Join us, friends. Hello, ma'am, and welcome to the session, dear.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be
Thank
here
you
with
so
you
much.
today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for saying yes to the International Fab Talks and sharing your time and expertise, and such that it could benefit many people. And my dear friends, if you like this video and if you think that somebody requires to view this and listen to it, please do share it with them. Ma'am, I take the privilege of sharing your profile in an official way before we start the session.
Certainly.
Thank you, dear. Friends, it's always a honor, as you all know, and a privilege as well to share the profile of our celebrity and guest friends. So let us go ahead and understand as to who Roopa ma'am is and what her work is. Join us, friends, now on this beautiful day and make it a little more pleasant for all of us. Roopa Belur ma'am currently works as a therapist in Canada. Roopa ma'am has been working in the field of developmental disabilities. So let's get to know more as to what it is. And she has spent 20 plus years in this beautiful field of inspiring people across the world, and she would like to see a change in all of us, that we are able to be more inclusive and give respect to each and every person that we come across. So 20 years of service as a therapist in Canada, that is wonderful. She works with individuals across various age groups, including children, adolescents, adults, couples, etc., who are on the autism spectrum, who have ADHD or other developmental disabilities, embracing a collaborative approach. She would love to collaborate with one and all for one main reason: to see that there is equality and there's an inclusive society. And she has a very distinctive style of learning and utilizes this perspective to understand the differences and implement effective interventions tailored to each person's unique needs. That's wonderful, because every person, every individual who comes under the autism spectrum have different symptoms, or they may have different types of needs. It could be need-based attention or need-based therapy. So ma'am very accurately focuses and has tailor-made sessions for her clients. It could be one of you too who would require her session for your loved ones. It could be that. Over the years, ma'am has been giving her life and energy and passion in a very significant way. She has contributed to various educational institutions, ranging from universities and communities, or you could say this community colleges as well, to high schools as well. She has played a very beautiful role, a key role, you could say, in facilitating and accommodating individuals with autism spectrum disorder, that is ASD. And this involves providing coaching sessions for professors, teachers, students, disability staff, etc., focusing on understanding the manifestations of ASD and tailoring individualized plans to support affected individuals effectively. In her effort to foster inclusion, as I earlier mentioned, now the 21st century focuses on inclusion. Earlier, there were different types of thought processes that certain segment of the society should be ostracated or they should be sidelined. But today, we all live in an inclusive world, and hence ma'am focuses on building a beautiful world for everyone, especially those with developmental disabilities. And she has spoken at various conferences emphasizing the need for flexibility in accommodating individuals with ASD. Join us, friends, to know more about ma'am, about her life, as to why she has chosen this beautiful field and how her journey has been. Let's celebrate her life story here on the International Fab Talks. Hello, ma'am, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, dear. Now, dear ma'am, I've just shared briefly about you. Our audience and people around the world would love to know it directly from you as to who the real Rupa is, the real Roopa Belur. Yes, dear.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Andrea, this was about over 20 years ago when I grew up in India, in Bangalore. Bangalore is a very dear city to me. And as I was an undergraduate degree and trying to find my space as to what would I like to do, my sister introduced me to a school here for the visually impaired students. And I started volunteering. And I think that's where I found a niche. I felt like this is what I really want to do is I want to be with the industry. I want to serve the special needs population. And that's kind of what drove me into this world. Specifically with autism, I moved to the United States in 2004, and I worked with a psychologist in the United States. And that's where my learning about autism spectrum disorder really evolved. And I realized that we expect them to change to adapt to us. But I think what I learned over the last 20 years is why don't we adapt the environment and our ways of thinking to accommodate them into our world. So that's really kind of where the journey started, and it's been unique. It's been beautiful. It's intriguing always, and there's something to learn with every individual I meet. I think I want to start off by saying if you meet one person with autism, you only meet one person with autism, which is why, as you were introducing me, I had mentioned how we really need to tailor the supports to every individual. Instead of saying one size fits all, my approach is let's understand the person from their lens instead of saying, hey, this is kind of what we want to do for everybody. Yeah.
That's really wonderful, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing and introducing yourself in a beautiful way. Ma'am, now many of us, many of the people in India and across the world, they still do not have a clear picture as to what is ASD. Would you like to elaborate on that and give us a clear picture as to really what it is and how we could identify our loved ones if they are suffering from this disorder?
Absolutely, Andrea. That's a good question. So, autism spectrum, I think the key thing is to focus on the word autism spectrum. And, spectrum is like an umbrella or a rainbow. Um, it's a continuum. So you can have people who are fairly impacted with autism, and that would be somebody that's nonverbal, has difficulty with everyday life skills, or you could have somebody who is immensely intelligent but is struggling with some of the core characteristics of autism spectrum disorder. So the key thing to understand is it is a spectrum, so no two people look alike. To get to your question, Andrea, in terms of what does it look like? What are we looking for autism? It is a neurodevelopmental disorder, which means you are born with it. Can it be identified at a young age? In some cases, it can be. In some cases, I diagnose people as old as 20, 30, 40. In fact, the oldest person I diagnosed recently was 65 years old. So it's sometimes hard to identify when they're younger. And what I mean by that is you're looking at difficulties with communication. And communication just does not end with talking and saying, hi, Andrea, what's your name? Or look at that flower or look at that plane. It's also using it for social communication purposes. I don't want to be here right now. I want to go somewhere else because I feel tired or the light is too bright. So to express something that's more deep can be a little more harder for some people on the spectrum. So you're looking at communication difficulties. Something that stands out with a lot of people on the spectrum are difficulties with socializing with others. It does not mean they don't want to socialize. A lot of difficulties are, I don't know how to socialize. So it can come across awkward, it can come across a little more different. Some people you may see when I'm doing diagnostic work with young children, they seem a little more withdrawn. They don't want to participate in a play. So these are some of those characteristics I look for. To give you an example, when I'm diagnosing a child with autism or possibly looking for a diagnosis, I have a table full of toys. I have dolls, I have Play-Doh, I have interactive materials. So I'm really looking at, is the child going to interact with me? Is the child going to socialize with me and say, hey, Rupa, look at this, or draw their attention? So these are things that I'm looking for. And typically, their challenges on those areas in that social aspect. Something else that we also look for, Andrea, is repetitive behavior. Again, a fancy word. But what this means is doing the same thing again and again. A classic thing that you would read in textbooks is spinning the wheels again and again, or lining up toys, or it's just difficulties with being flexible or transitioning to from one activity to another. So these are some of the indicators that we look for, whether it's a child or whether it's an adult, as to does this impact you? How does it impact you? And that may lead to a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. I hope that answered your question, Andrea.
Yes, dear. Yes, dear, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Very much with lots of clarity you've shared that. That's really very nice. Now, ma'am, I'd like to know what is the difference that you've noticed between India and the Western countries? Like, where are they more open? I'm sure the Western countries are very much open and accepting with their loved ones suffering from ASD or come under the autism spectrum. Now, do we Indians also have these progressive thoughts of understanding that yes, our child requires therapy, something's not okay, or just they take it lightly? Now, what do you think according to your experiences that you've had?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Andrea. To be honest, I haven't worked in India as a therapist. I have visited schools in India. I've collaborated with a school in Bangalore that I have visited. I've done some training for teachers in a school, but have I worked here for months together? I haven't. But I do see a lot of Indians that do come for diagnosis, even in Canada at the clinic that I work at. So to give you a very honest answer, the openness or understanding of perhaps my child has autism, it's a lot more open when the person is more impacted. Like if there are more difficulties, people seem to have a greater understanding that, hey, you know what, I think my child needs help. Where the difficulty comes is when the child has no intellectual disability but has autism. That's where people struggle to realize, does the child need help? Because the intelligence is there. But then with the intelligence, there are difficulties with socialization, there's difficulties with maybe getting up in the morning and saying, okay, I'm going to get into the school bus to go to school. That transition may be hard. So in general, it's getting better overall, whether it's Indians or the Western society, but that really depends on, is the child intellectually impacted? Is the child not intellectually impacted? That I think is the crux of what calls for that decision. I think India is a big country, one, but I also always think of India as, cities like Chennai, Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay, there's more exposure, there's more understanding of developmental disabilities. My worry is always about the rural part of India, where what is the education, what is the level of understanding, what is the child going to be branded as, because there is capacity in everybody. It's about recognizing the capacity instead of defining them only through the lens of autism. So it's getting better, slow and easy. Is that acceptance really wide? Not yet. But I think we're moving forward. It's baby steps. It's not 100% there.
Yes, dear. I love the way you said this, baby steps. And yes, it's already begun. So let's take it further, my dear friends. Do share this video with the right kind of people so that they learn and get some information and create awareness amongst themselves and amongst the rural India as well, amongst the rural people in India. So much. Thank you very much. Ma'am, if I'm not mistaken, the neurodivergent community, it's the latest term that's been given to people who come under the autism spectrum disorder. Am I right? Did I get that right, ma'am?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Andrea. And I think it's a question that's much needed to be addressed, because you hear the word neurodivergence a lot in 2023, 2024. So neurodivergence largely is, there is a different way of thinking. And I think largely people with ADHD and autism are put under the umbrella of neurodivergence. You don't have to be diagnosed Like you don't need a clinical diagnosis of autism or ADHD to consider yourself neurodivergent. It's that different way of thinking. It's a little more different than what is stereotypical. So that would be considered neurodivergence, but largely used within the autism community.
Yes.
Yeah, so it is something it's a terminology that's very commonly used, and you see this especially in workplace. So if you're considered neurodivergent and let's say you work for an IT company, what could be the accommodations you may require because you're neurodivergent? So you're really good at IT and maybe whatever the IT related skills are, but what that means to me is the lighting in my office too bright? Is there too much social stimulation around me? Is there a lot of people coming and disturbing me when I'm really focused on a task that I may find it difficult to focus back, right? So those are the type of accommodations I would advocate for somebody who considers themselves neurodivergent and they're in a workplace and need some accommodation to thrive better.
Yes, Deepa. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that. The next question, ma'am. Now, you've been in this field for 20 plus years. Now, with regard to gender, which gender is affected more with autism spectrum disorder?
Andrea, I'm so glad you asked that question. This is almost like I wanted you to ask this question. Largely what you see in statistics. So if you were to just on your other screen, if you Google autism spectrum disorder, definitely the boys, the male gender is way more impacted than the female gender. So we're looking at a 5:1 ratio, 5 being male and 1 being female. So the diagnostic rate is definitely way higher in boys than in girls. That being said, Andrea, what I have noticed in my practice as I'm evolving in this journey in the last 3 to 4 years is a lot of females are getting missed when they're younger. So they're not getting identified because the way they present with autism characteristics are a little different from the way some of the boys typically present. And this is not like 100%, this is not set in stone, but largely females get missed. And I think the reason is there's a lot of what we call masking or camouflaging. They try to mimic others by trying to study and understand others. So as a result, they get missed when they're younger. And that masking, camouflaging, they get really tired doing that for a long time. And that sometimes gets misdiagnosed as depression or bipolar or other things. But it's getting better. I think through research, through TikTok, through platforms like yours, like YouTube, Instagram, there's a lot more awareness, and people are coming out and saying, hey, you know what? I think I identify with these characteristics, but I've just tried to mimic and mask my real self to try to fit into the social world, but I'm getting tired. So that's what I'm seeing a lot more in females right now. But from a pure statistics point, Andrea, it is boys than girls. But I do think the girls are getting missed.
Yes, Steve. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, ma'am, you've mentioned depression. Now, people who are depressed, do they also fall under this category? Because there are a few students who I've seen, youngsters as young as 20, 25, get into depression for a certain phase, then they bounce back to normal, then again depressed. Now, I have a question, like, is this also under that, or maybe it could be real depression, or it's a symptom of ASD? What is it, ma'am?
Yeah, that's a good question, Andrea. It's hard to, definitely depression can be as a result of being on the spectrum. It could be because, hey, I'm not accepted in my peer group in college, that cool group of girls or boys. I can't fit into that group, but I do want friendships. I want friendships, but I don't have friendships. I get anxious in certain situations. So this can lead to depressive symptoms, which is lack of energy, lack of interest, poor sleep, or sleeping too much, lack of appetite, or overeating, some of the classic symptoms of depression. So depression could be as a result of some of the characteristics of autism, but you can also have depression without autism. So I think the key is to understand what is causing the depression. Is it my social anxiety? Or is it purely because of some other reason that I couldn't pass my second PUC exam with really good marks or meet up my parents' expectations and I didn't get admission into that perfect engineering college? So that depression would be different. That is more, I failed at what I was supposed to do, or I didn't meet my parents' dreams. But with autism, it's more, I want a friend, but I'm not able to have a friend. I get very, very anxious at work because there are too many social parties. They ask me to come out for lunch. I'm trying to go, but I don't want to. Will this not give me the promotion that I want? So that's just a very random example, but that can cause depression. That I find it very difficult to transition from one activity to another. It makes my life really difficult. That can get manifested as I don't want to go to school, which can get manifested as depression. So yes, you can have autism and depression, or you can have depressive symptoms as a result of the core characteristics of autism.
Yes, dear. Dear ma'am,
Yeah.
now I have a very big question for you. What inspired you to enter into this field? Where did you feel that there is a need here for me to enter into the field and give my best? There are people who select different professions. What made you select this beautiful profession, dear?
I owe it to one of the ladies I worked for back in the US. Her name is Dr. Rebecca Dossett. She's a psychologist. I think what inspired me the most, Andrea, is the way she dealt with people on the spectrum, most importantly, their families. She did it with a lot of respect and honor. And I realized as I worked in this community that we often tend to look at many people on the spectrum from the world of criticism. So, for example, you go to a teacher and you're having a parent-teacher meeting. It's more about, oh, your child did not sit quietly, does not have the attention span, cannot do this, cannot write ABCD, does not focus, does not transition. So it's so negative that I think what Dr. Rebecca Dossett taught me is, why are we chasing the negative? Why are we not chasing that beautiful strength that child possesses? So instead of celebrating the strength, we are constantly picking on what the child cannot do. And I think that approach that she had was a game-changing approach for me, Andrea, which taught me, let's celebrate the strength instead of constantly seeing what the child cannot do. And I think that's what really inspired me to say, I want to get into this field. I want to advocate for people who are on the autism spectrum and also advocate for their families, but from the lens of respect and honor, not from the lens of criticism. And I think that's my mantra, is honor them for their diversity instead of criticizing them for something that they cannot do. I often think of my example, Andrea, where I struggled with physics all my life. I could have chased physics and constantly felt depressed about not learning physics. Instead, I decided this is not my strength. Why don't I chase what I can thrive on, right? So, if I were to use the same principle, if a child really likes trains, Thomas the train or any train, and they're struggling to learn how to add, instead of teaching them 1 plus 1, my approach is teach them how to add trains. Let's bring the trains into the curriculum. Let's integrate their interest instead of chasing their deficit. So that, I think, is my big inspiration to be in this field, and it'll continue to be until I live.
That's really wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you so much. Dear ma'am, the next question is, what kind of a change you would love to see in the world with regard to people changing their thought process with regard to ASD? Like, are we able to really create awareness? Are people ready to come forward and to be a part of the awareness campaign that we are trying to highlight on this particular topic?
Right.
Do you think people are more open, or we need to drag them into the scene and put them there and say, please sit down and listen to me? Or like, what is from the experiences that you've had?
Yeah, it's a question of the hour, and based on today's world and needs, there is a lot of work that's required, Andrea. To be honest, I think there is awareness, which is beautiful. There's way more awareness thanks to media, internet, books. Also, I think a lot of people who are on the spectrum who are releasing videos on TikTok, it's inspirational. I think dragging them needs to be done. If it's educational, it has to be done in a manner where they can relate to it instead of just saying, okay, I want to educate you. It has to be done in a manner where they can relate to it. I think there's a lot of requirement for accommodations in schools, accommodations in workplace, so we're really far away from the goal that my dream goal of seeing inclusion, or beyond inclusion, inclusion with respect, inclusion with, it's okay to be who you are. I honor you for who you are, just like I honor me for who I am. So that honoring of the diversity, we are a little far away from that because we want people to change and say, hey, fit this. It's like that one size fits all. You have one t-shirt and you distribute it to everybody, but it doesn't work. Not everybody is going to fit into that medium or small t-shirt, right? So we create different sizes so it fits different body types. If you were to adapt that same principle, we really need to learn to accept somebody for who they are from their lens. And we are far away from that. There is a lot of education that's required, I would say, for teachers, maybe college professors, workplace, instead of saying, this is the IT company, this is the lighting, this is the structure, you have to fit into this. We have to make small changes like, hey, you have this skill, you're really good at computers. Can I give you a room that's a little more separated? You don't have to be in a cubicle. Do we need dull lighting? Do you want to use headphones when you come? Do you need to work from home a little more if that's a possibility, right? So those are the small adaptations we need to learn to make instead of that one size fits all approach. So there is a lot of requirement, Andrea, to answer your question, to educate the public in different platforms and in different manner. But we need to educate the public in a very friendly manner. It shouldn't be, this is what you need to do. They need to understand, hey, why do I need to do this? And I think the why is important. And sometimes we fail to answer the why. We just become very instructional. We just say, okay, this is what you do. And I believe in targeting the why of why. It's no different than, think of this, Andrea, when you have somebody on a wheelchair and let's say you have an office and there are only 6 steps to get to your office. What would you do to make sure the person can enter your office? What would you do if you were to make an accommodation? You would possibly build a ramp, right? Because the wheelchair is not going to go on the steps. So we have made an accommodation by building a ramp to say, I'm going to take the person in the wheelchair on the ramp to get into the office. So we made an accommodation. That's the same principle I would use for somebody with autism. We just have to learn to make some accommodations and celebrate their strengths. It's not, I would call it the invisible disability. The wheelchair is a visible disability, but I look at this as an invisible disability.
Yes, dear. That's really nice for creating an awareness that they have to be accommodated in the right way. And that should be done with lots of respect and dignity. Yes, dear.
Right.
That's really
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, ma'am, the next question is how people should connect with you. Now, if at all there's someone out there who views this and they would like to get connected with you, they are interested to know more about it, they want to be in your shoes.
Right. Yeah, so good question. I think one of the best ways, because I'm not in India, but this is obviously an international platform. I'm not sure how this could be communicated, Andrea. I can leave my email. I'm quite good at checking my email and very happy to help through email. I also have a LinkedIn profile, which is Roopa Belur. And do you want me to just tell my email ID here? Would that be easier, Andrea? Okay, so it's ROOPABLORE at gmail.com. So ROOPABLORE at gmail.com, like Roopa Belur, short form for Bangalore. gmail.com. So I'll be very happy to connect with her. And then we can always set up a phone call conversation and things like that. I think those would be the best ways to reach me. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. I'm always happy to take a message and answer any questions.
Yes, dear. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing your contact details that people could reach out to you. It could be parents, it could be, colleagues, it could be of colleagues of a certain institution who would like to connect with you, would like to bond you. Now, I'd like to ask you, what is that one thing that you love about Rupa?
Love about Rupa. I think I'm not sure. Uh, to me, I don't know if that answers your question, Andrea. If it's love about Rupa, what I think I have decided to always learn is every individual I meet, whether it is a 2-year-old child, a 16-year-old adolescent, or a 45 to 60-year-old adult that I see in therapy or through diagnosis, they are my best teachers. I mean, I could read a lot about autism, I could do more research, I could read all the literature that's available on autism. But I think to me, uh, the biggest thing is each and every individual teaches me something about themselves, whether it's autism, about life, about dignity, many things. But they are my best teachers. And I hope and wish that I can always maintain that character within me to honor them for who they are. I think that respect is what it is very important for me that I respect everybody for who they are and let them be my teacher and teach me every day. It's a beautiful journey. It's a learning journey and it's endlessly intriguing.
Yes, dear. You're very humble, ma'am. I could see that you have a lot of humbleness within you. Dear ma'am, the question here that now arises, what kind of therapy, or there are different tailor-made therapies as you mentioned. If you could
Right.
mention any 2 or 3 of them, then we can get a quick idea of what is it, what they could expect when they connect with you. I mean, the parents
Yeah.
or the caregivers or the people whose loved ones come under this category.
Absolutely. So something that I work on a lot, Andrea, it's called ACT, abbreviated as ACT. What that really means is acceptance and commitment therapy. Sounds like a very fancy word, but again, the word is acceptance. The key word is an acceptance of who they are, an understanding of their needs instead of fighting it, instead of saying, this is wrong, this is maladaptive thinking, you need to change your thought process. So I work from the lens of acceptance. I also work from the lens of tell me your story. What is your story? I want to hear your story instead of me correcting you or telling you this is right or this is wrong, right? So I really want to hear their journey. And a lot of my work is something is wrong with me. Why do I feel like this? Why do I feel anxious? For example, if this is what I hear, my work is on the psychoeducation piece of instead of saying this is something is wrong with you, I turn that narrative into let's understand why you feel that way and work around it instead of saying that's wrong, this is maladaptive, this is irrational. I want you to change your process of thinking, which is classic therapy style. That's something I don't use. Again, it comes from the lens of this is your neurological makeup. What can we do to work around it? So largely acceptance and commitment. And I I kind of work on, for example, if somebody says, I'm very anxious, I don't want to go here. I work on a plan of okay, how can we reduce your anxiety? What can we do? Is it that you have to go to a mall? Is the mall too busy? Can we wear headphones to cancel the noise? Can we go at a time when it's not too crowded so you can enter and exit? What are some tools you can have in your hand? Do you need a fidget to calm yourself down? Do you need music to ground yourself to feel better? And this could be coupled with breathing techniques. This could be coupled with just closing your eyes and maybe imagining something that's more positive for you. Or a lot of my guys like anime, which is a Japanese cartoon. Can we go and just kind of read some anime books to say, I want to transport myself to something that calms me down, right? So really work on what can we bring that high anxiety to low anxiety.
Yes, dear. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for sharing all that you've, you know, collected and gathered through these years, your rich experience that you have as a professional, and you're sharing all of that with us today. Thank you very much. We look forward to many more interactions with you. And
Mhm.
before we sign off, I'd like to come back and ask you once again, did I leave out anything that or I didn't focus my attention on in asking a question with regard to ASD? Would you like to share it from your space, dear, which I missed out?
Andrea, I think you did a great job. You targeted the male-female ratio. You spoke about accommodations, schools, and things like that. I think the only thing I can think of is we need a lot of education, which has to start at grassroots. And I think a good place to start is schools. My hope is that in India or anywhere in the world, that there is that grassroots level where if it's preschool or kindergarten, we can start that element of teacher training where we can tell the teachers not to get fixated on the behavior, saying he's aggressive, she's not listening, he's not listening. Instead of that, take a back step and think of what is this behavior communicating, instead of focusing on, let's say, John is aggressive or Radha is angry or temper tantrums. We get very caught up with behaviors, negative language. Instead, let's take a minute, breathe, and say, what is that behavior communicating? Why is Radha getting upset? Why is John breaking the table or throwing the pencil when he walks into the classroom? Instead of focusing on the behavior, is it because it's too noisy? Is it because there's a new teacher in the class and John doesn't know what to expect? So I think that element of patience and is what we need, instead of constantly labeling them as aggressive, uh, doesn't listen, poor attention. It just gets too caught up with the negative remarks, Andrea. And I think when a parent goes for a parent teacher meeting, let's start off as something that the child can do. I think the parent deserves to hear, even if it means putting one block in a box, let's celebrate that. Right. I think that is really, really required. I feel that's a huge gap in this world, that we get too caught up with the cannot instead of what they can. And I that's my big paradigm shift that I'm hoping to see on this planet, is to celebrate those trends and positives.
Yes, dear. Thank you so much, ma'am. You mentioned just dropping a block in the right place could be celebrated. It could be as simple as that. And I think all the managements, school managements, the educational institutions, instead of focusing only on the marks, instead of focusing on sports, let them focus on, I mean, it's good to focus on all areas, all cultural activities, sports, games, marks, everything. But understanding the why a child behaves in this way, understanding the
Right.
thought process, or the the things that are really we really need to focus on. As you said, it's a neurological setup, or you could
Right.
say the neurobiological setup, you could say, if I'm getting that right.
Right.
The real reason should be understood, and I'm sure we could make a vast difference with all the educational institutions coming forward, standing up for the right cause. Because, as you said, these children who come under the spectrum of autism, they are highly intellectual, right?
Yeah, and they all have their unique strengths, and what that could look like is different for everybody, um, honestly. But I think we're constantly chasing the deficits instead of chasing what they can. So let's celebrate that, as my motto.
Yes, dear.
Yeah.
Yes. So with this, ma'am, we'd like to request all our viewers and all the people across the world to come forward to understand the real meaning of being a good citizen in this world, of being inclusive and accepting and enabling others to live just the way we live on this planet, and to look at everyone with the same love, respect, and happiness that they have to share in this world with each one, without segregating them or labeling them or putting them down. Especially, we've seen teachers doing this several times. So I think the teachers have to be educated, and the
I think
family.
everybody's trying their best. I do believe there's goodwill, and I know there's a lot of students. They're also overloaded with a lot of work. So I have a lot of respect for everybody. It's nobody's fault, Andrea. It may just mean that more education is required, in the system. And maybe teachers need more support too, right? It means they may need more educational assistance. So it's not about right or wrong. It's maybe, again, that community coming together. It takes a village to raise a child.
Wow.
So I think that approach is the best approach. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, ma'am, for everything that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much for taking out the time. We look forward to many more interactions with you. And we hope that all of you out there, if you really want to connect with our celebrity and guest, you could do that. We'll share her email ID and maybe the LinkedIn profile, etc. in the description. You can connect with ma'am. It would really be great. Or refer her name to somebody who really requires her services and expertise. Thank you
Perfect.
so
Thank you,
much.
Andrea. Thanks a lot for having me. It was great chatting with you today.
Thank you, dear. Thank you, ma'am.
Take care.
Take care, dear. My dear friends, with this, we come to an end to the International Fab Talks for today, dear friends. Do share this video with the right kind of people and create awareness. Be a blessing to the universe, like how Roopa Belur ma'am is a blessing to all the people around us. And you too could do that by just doing one simple work. Create awareness in your own space. And if you like what the International Fab Talks is doing, like, comment, subscribe, and of course, share the video. Stay blessed and stay safe. Create awareness, spread awareness.
Thank you, Andrea. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.